Welcome to the MadTrio podcast. This week we have the California Pariah, Jonathan Charney, James, the Fat Man Stevens, and Rob, the old guy.
The old guy. He's here.
So we wanted to tell you off the top of the show, since apparently we never tell you, you can get a hold of us on Facebook, Instagram, and we have an email at madtrioshow@gmail.com. And you will hear more about the show after our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. They have online monthly game nights on Discord, so make sure you stop by their Facebook page for event times and dates. You can also grab a free quarantine version of the game straight off their website. Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people.
Thanks, Audacity.
So, in early 1945, Congress was posed to do something previously unthinkable. Can you guess what that is?
What year? 1935?
1945.
45. So, other than, I can think of all kinds of war things.
Draft women. The U.S. Army needed nurses, and it needed them badly. The costly Normandy invasion, the fierce fighting in the French Bocage, and the bloody Ardennes offensive had produced casualties that strained Army medical resources to the breaking point. An acute shortage of nurses, by the way, that's a funny sentence. That's a good pun. Acute shortage of nurses, the Army said was...
just cute.
Acute. I said it the way I said it on purpose. Was jeopardizing the care...
Because you only wanted cute nurses?
Yes.
So we're going to only draft cute nurses. Sorry.
The last
rest
time...
of you.
Yeah. Well, how about female nurses?
So now if we do it today, they all wear masks and you can't tell anyway.
The last time I asked for a cute nurse, you know what they gave me? They gave me a guy over 60.
That's right.
I actually told him, hey, can I send you back? He's like, why? It's like, you were not what I requested.
Yeah,
He got a good laugh out of that. An acute shortage of nurses, the Army said, was jeopardizing the care given to wounded fighting men. This is the first time that I've actually read, and I've heard it before, but this is the first time I've actually seen that they were considering drafting. I don't know if they actually did.
So I had never heard that before. Not that I believe that there are a number of things probably in the planning stages, but were not implemented during the war. I mean, things in the beginning were not going well, so there were all kinds of ideas. I mean, we had women ferrying, P-51 Mustangs from the factories to areas to take off to go overseas. I mean, we had women in the factories making all these things because there weren't enough men. I mean, so it wouldn't surprise me.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at it either, but I mean, were they drafting them for combat or just for nursing?
Oh, they would
probably
never
just for nursing.
Yeah, back in 1945, there would have never been.
That's what you didn't quite clarify, John. You just said that they were drafting that there was a shortage of nurses, but you didn't specify that they were only looking for nurses and not.
Hey,
to have
you know what?
women,
if we want those women in the trenches, I'm fine with that too. I mean,
But there were some badass Russian and Finnish sniper women groups out there, and not to even mention those Israeli women.
Yeah.
Well, the article specifically, this is HistoryNet, by the way, on historynet.com, doesn't actually state in the beginning of the article, they just say nurses, because at least in the Western world, you'd never find women on frontline. You'd never see them be on the front lines. Now, unless it was maybe like a MASH unit or something similar, but I don't think those existed at that point in time.
I don't know.
So
you never asked me, and I never looked.
2 days before the president's address, the superintendent of the Army Nurse Corps, Colonel Florence A. Blanchfield, had said the Army had a target of 50,000 nurses, 10,000 fewer than the president's claim. Under her figures, the shortage was roughly 8,000 nurses, not 18,000 the president had cited. And that's Roosevelt, by the way.
Wow.
So we were talking about that. Remember, we mentioned about the Russians were using women snipers. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this woman's name.
Oh, don't. Yeah.
I can't do it.
Come on, give it a shot.
She was a Soviet sniper in the Red Army during World War II, credited with 309 confirmed kills.
What was her nickname? Because I think I know who it is.
I think I know who you're talking about too.
Yeah, I mean,
trying to pronounce her name.
I remember reading about her before, and unfortunately, I'm just not going to slaughter the name.
But yeah, I mean, that's
she was known as Lady Death.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's, you want to go back to Viking times, for crying out loud. The women fought side by side. So
yeah, the Shield Maidens.
That's right.
Indeed. And so I'm skipping ahead a little bit in this article. So an estimated 280,000 nurses in the United States during the war year, more than 74,000. That's 74000. About 26% had volunteered for wartime service, although many applicants were rejected by inability to meet Army physical standards. Among other reasons, the Army Nurse Corps grew dramatically during the war. In 1940, consisted of 942 nurses. By 1945, had grown to 42,000 nurses, all volunteers.
Well, there were a number. If you go to fatalities during World War II deaths, there's a number of nurses that were killed in action.
Now, my only question, and I literally have never heard this, and I unfortunately haven't bothered to look it up. Were they like at aid stations, or were they only at Army hospitals? Because my assumption, just because the way the world was in the Western world, that they would not have been at aid stations. They would have been at like hospital areas. Like after, it had been at least quasi.
Well, so we had multiple things. I mean, you got to remember, we had battlefronts that were shifted dramatically during the wars, and sometimes you may have been back behind the lines in a hospital tent area that all of a sudden became the front lines, and I mean that's the way it went. So
risk was potentially a significant factor. Army nurses were non-combatants, but they often served in danger areas. 70% served overseas, often close to the front lines. When the Philippines fell in 1942, the Japanese captured 67 Army nurses along with 11 Navy nurses and held them in internment camps for nearly 3 years. During the war, 201 nurses died in service.
Yeah.
16 of them from the enemy fire because of the danger Army nurses faced and their difficult working conditions. I should have read more in the article. So the reason I brought this up, the reason I brought this up is you always hear. You never really hear about the backstage people. It's always the badass people in the front of the line. You definitely never hear about the women in the war who aren't usually when you hear that, you hear Rosie the Riveter, the ladies building planes. Yeah. And I thought when I saw this article, it's like, oh, this is badass.
I think it's a good thing to bring history back up to the forefront. For some of the younger listeners that we have here, probably have no idea about even what went on and what started World War II. To hear about what took place.
It's Archduke Ferdinand, right?
That's right. So
the treaties of Versailles.
Well, that was probably that's probably the number one cause, but we're not going to get into that much history.
But most people will think it's just because Hitler decided to take over the world.
Yeah, it was just
versus the treaties that were killing the German economy, which Hitler did fix and could have just stopped there. But anyways,
hey, when you're a psychopath, why stop there?
Well, I've listened to part of the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich.
Yeah, that's about all you can get through. Try reading the dang thing.
Try driving when we're listening to it. So I've listened to that, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. The consensus was last time I was really into that part of history. Was most people thought if Hitler had stopped at the point of taking back the Rhineland, everybody would have praised him for his ability to raise the level of poverty, to get everybody better. They said from
what I understood.
So you also have the fact that how do you generate jobs and how do you generate and stimulate your economy? In Germany, it's of okay size, but it's not huge. And so
it's pretty small, actually.
Right. So the look at it is to how do we start doing it? Starting the war was not uncommon to get people back to work and producing in factories.
I mean, that's what saved the United States from the...
I was going to say it fixed us.
Yeah, exactly. So wartime economies are known, and that may have been part of it. The problem is this guy was such a freaking nut job and then blamed a particular group of people for all their ills, which we know is bogus, and the rest of it's history. So read it. So did you guys know that Colt Firearm Manufacturing Company was recently sold?
Yep.
So, okay, I actually did not know that.
Okay, so here's the interesting fact. The thing that's interesting about it, Colt has been having problems financially for quite a while now.
I knew that.
On and on for at least the last decade or more. And even though they have some very, very large contracts with the military and law enforcement and all that, they were having problems. And so basically they've been up for sale for quite a while. So here's where things get a little strange for me. The company that bought Colt Holdings is a company called CZ or CZG, as they're known, or as the group. And for those of you out there that know about CZ, they are, let me make sure I get this right, headquartered in the Czech Republic. So they have their own production facility in the Czech Republic, and they have been producing some firearms in the United States as well. And so now Colt Firearm Manufacturing is owned by a foreign company.
Okay. Are they moving their manufacturing facilities out of the United States?
Well, no,
I know they do some outside of the United States, but
they're not saying. Here's the issue. I think to a degree, we're not sure 100% what CZ is going to do as far as manufacturing, and I have a little bit of problem. And now, okay, I've known of CZ for a very, very long time. They've been manufacturing firearms, I don't know, forever over there. And they actually make some very nice, very well-made firearms. None that I personally have chose to own, but they're quality guns. They have some quality guns out there. They have some that are not, but Colt had their own issues as well. So, but with that said, my problem is that we have a major military manufacturer making military weapons that are now owned by a foreign government, the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I'm
looking them up, and it says that their headquarters is in Kansas City.
Well, they have
they're a Czech company, so
their headquarters is not in Kansas City. So whoever wrote that, they have an office.
It's on Wikipedia, which is interesting.
It's probably
they're based in Kansas City, Kansas.
It's probably their former headquarters. It probably hasn't, because this happened within. I heard about it within the last week. It's fairly recent news that they were sold.
Okay. Well, this is according to Wikipedia. CZ USA is a U.S.-based subsidiary.
There you go. Yeah.
The Czech blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Czech firearms manufacturer. I could not say any of that without butchering it. Based in Kansas City, Kansas, but it says CZ-USA is responsible. So is this CZ-USA? Is that just a different company? Not saying it's not owned by them, but is that like not their?
My understanding is CZ-USA is a subsidiary of CZG, which is the main parent company in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, it's probably it's like what Disney and a lot of these companies do.
Okay, I see it.
When they
see
go
where the CZUB is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of these companies when they have different, like say for Honda, for example, there's Honda America its parent company is Honda Japan or whatever it's called.
Right.
Says they also own Dan Wesson firearms.
Well, they've owned Dan Wesson for a while, but they don't produce many Dan Wesson brand firearms.
I hope not.
Which at one time was a great
Dude,
company.
They're still not freaking cheap.
No, they're the whole idea behind Dan Wesson is to be a little higher quality. Their design is different than the Smith & Wesson, but I happen to own an original Dan Wesson group of guns that are just fantastic, made really well. But that's back in the 1970s, so.
Interesting. I never knew about this CZ company.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
If you could, of course, right now with the demand in firearms so much, there's a lot of new CZ's owners out there because it's the only thing available. Their design is very interesting, and this is going to get too geeky for this particular audience, so we won't get into it. Other than to say that they make a very heavy,
I've seen some of these
heavy firearm. They are stout. They are stout in weight and very difficult to carry on a regular basis unless you're a very young person and you don't have back issues.
Or you're in a wheelchair and want to carry some of the heavier.
Yeah, well,
because like the Smith & Wesson 500, I know somebody who wanted to carry one, and it's just like you're going to have to be in a chair or a fairly larger person.
Yeah, well,
to hide
we
a
always
500.
have crazy people.
This is true.
Hey, I wanted to buy a 500 just so I could put it on my CCW permit.
I still want one.
Well, I was going to carry it,
so
but I just wanted to
all right. We want to go there. I have a student who put on his permit his Desert Eagle, made by Magnum Research, which is an Israeli company. But I'm not done with the story. It's in 50 AE. So it's virtually the 500, but in a semi-automatic.
Man.
And expensive to shoot.
It is.
Man.
It is. It's like putting a brick, maybe 2 bricks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so heavy and it's so big.
Where is he going to put that? How's he going to carry that?
So he
style.
like you said, I'm just doing it because I can. So there's always people that push the envelope a little bit. And I had a discussion with him about it. And I said, come on. I didn't want to do it because, well, here's the kicker on the whole story. He's an expat from Great Britain. So he says, hey, I grew up thinking that you'd have just looked at a gun, it would go off. So he moved over here. He became a U.S. citizen. He buys firearms like crazy because he wasn't able to in Britain.
That makes sense.
I am questioning, just curious, like where, if you're carrying that, where exactly is the situation revolving that you put yourself in that you need a 50 caliber handgun?
I don't know.
I mean, are you in the middle of a soccer riot?
That's good. I don't know.
No, there's no reason for it whatsoever. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I don't tell people what they can and can't do.
So I
just do what the law tells me I can do with them.
So the last famous king of smut has died.
Larry King?
No, close.
Oh, not Larry King.
He had a movie about him.
The Hustler guy,
Larry Flint.
I got the wrong. Yeah. Sorry, Larry King. I apologize in heaven. I didn't mean to put you in the same vein as Flint.
Larry Flint died. The last major king of smut, the man who, oddly enough, if you're a First Amendment supporter and you hate porn, you have to love Larry Flint because he was a major contributor to fighting for the First Amendment.
Yeah, he was.
As weird as it sounds, his ladies of the evening, bearing all, help support your right to say what you want.
Hey, you're going to get somebody, one of them, to say, hey, I was never a lady of the evening. She may have been a lady of the day, but she was
mid-afternoon.
No, come on. They're just, trying to get their way through college. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. So Larry Flint died. Yes, good for sad for the First Amendment, and sad for his family.
So now,
anyway,
now you have the two most famous putt pioneers. Smut pioneers.
Smut.
That's a hard damn sentence to say.
Smut pioneers.
They have.
Oh, you mean Hefner
and Larry Flint. The two most famous in the last century that I know.
for breaking the barriers. Yeah.
And talk about that. Heavy metal music increases positive emotion and reduces stress, according to Australian study. Which is true. Everybody I've ever known.
Did they have to be on some form of recreational drug to be able to say that?
No, everybody I know who loves metal music, including me, you rock out to heavy metal, you feel better.
You just feel afterwards you don't have any stress whatsoever.
No, I'm assuming, especially if you're in the pit, but you have to ask James on that one.
Yeah. For me, it always, helped relieve stress.
I'm sorry, you guys.
What?
Nothing.
No.
Okay. Any excuse.
I don't know. It was fun and a stress reliever for me because, you lose yourself in it and you get it. I mean, for a guy, I know a few women that were in pits because they like to do it as well, but it was just a fun thing. I mean, it's not necessarily what I would call relaxing. It's not like you're sitting there listening to some calm music or anything, but yeah, I kind of get it.
You know, because I think what they're saying, because it gets out all that pent up rage. You know, if you're listening to something hard, you're just rocking out, especially if you're in a concert venue with friends, or that moment, you just, you know, it's cathartic.
So John, now that we're on heavy metal, you hinted last week about discussing Marilyn Manson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's a stress reliever for his victims.
No, there have been. Sorry, what were you saying? I think every woman who's ever been near him has officially came out and say, even Jenna Jameson, who's a porn star or former porn star or reformed porn star, whatever. She even said, like, I read somewhere that she said he had dreams of wanting to burn me.
Well, according to what she said, is that he actually didn't just say, you know, that he had dreams of her. He was fantasizing about burning her alive.
Whew.
Yeah.
So
that's a little puritanical even for me.
Does he have some kind of issue?
Have you seen the guy?
I would say
Of course
quite a
I
bit
have.
of issues.
You know what the funniest thing about that is if you take a guy like Alice Cooper, who is one of the original shock jocks of that genre.
Well,
I wouldn't say he's the founder, because there were other people around that, but I think he was the king of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the king of it.
Like there's the original guy the guy who did I Put a Spell on You originally, I think could quasi be in that. But Alice Cooper, though, he hung himself. He did all this stuff to just play on your fears and the people of the time. But Marilyn Manson took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, he was pushing the envelope type thing.
Oh, and I think that's what he wanted to do. I mean, the fact is, when I first looked at him and read about him, I don't get it. I mean, I never did get it. But I'm an old guy.
You know, but the things that, so I've heard a couple different stories, and I probably should have looked this one up. I can't remember her name. Kind of scooting through some of my headlines that I have saved. The first girl to come out against Marilyn Manson. Do you remember her name, John?
I don't. But was that the one that was married to him?
No, I think she was a fiance. Hold on.
Pause for a commercial.
So what she said is that his current girlfriend, or Evan Rachel Wood, was the first one who came out. She said that his current, whatever, I don't know if it's his wife. I don't know if he's currently married. I don't have that right in front of me right now. She said that his current significant other threatened her with releasing nude photos that exist that Marilyn Manson had of her. Issue is that those nude photos were of her when she was underage. So he has nude pictures of Evan Rachel Wood of her being underage. So to me, that even brings in molestation charges.
Yes.
And statutory rape. So, I mean, this has become quite a big thing.
So do you think he's stupid enough to actually still retain those photos?
Probably not now.
I don't know.
I would.
But Evan Rachel Wood says that those photos actually exist.
Well, if they were ever online somewhere, then they can find them.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would ever put them online. That would be pretty dumb.
Everybody who I've ever heard talk about him say the dude is intelligent. So I'd like to believe he wouldn't have them still, but the people who like that sort of thing, they're the type of people that would hold on to it. So,
well, I mean, somebody that even,
it's like a memento. I mean, if
exactly,
he's really
it's a trophy
psycho that they're all claiming he is,
right?
Then just what Rob said, it's a trophy. It's a memento of his abuse that he can go and look at and relive it. It's one of the things that they use as far as serial abusers and killers.
And how long ago did she come out with this accusation?
Last couple of weeks?
No. She came out back a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
And so she came out with it saying, well, she hinted at it. Initially, she hinted at it. And then later on, because she was talking about abuse and she hinted at a famous person that she knew that was abused her, and then she finally came out and actually said who it was.
So, Michael, I wonder.
That's right.
I wonder how law enforcement hasn't gotten involved with this then at this point.
I think they're in the midst of it. I think they're taking it seriously finally.
But before there was probably not enough evidence, because any of the women would probably not want to come forth. Because let's be honest, he's Marylin Manson. He's fucking creepy, and excuse my language, and he has a lot of stroke. So I could see being afraid of that.
You think? You think he really has that much influence?
Look at his audience.
Well, I don't know. How big is his audience now? I mean,
huge.
Is it?
Yeah,
is he at his peak? He's not at his peak. Now he's on his decline.
No. His peak was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
But his audience is fanatical.
All right, well, that's fine. So what? I mean...
let me put it this way. I would not, from what I've heard in the past, I would not be surprised if one of his fans, from what I can remember, from people I've talked to and the reports I've seen, would have tried to do something. So I could see there being fear that way.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, he's got some pretty crazy fans out there that actually believe kind of like take his music very seriously in the dark things that it kind of talks about. And yeah, they can get really, really weird and creepy.
And the part that kind of I thought was so strange, you have people who I've listened to interviews of people who have been in his band. And they all say that Marylin Manson had the ability to be Brian Warner, which is, by the way, his real name. That he had the ability to separate the two. Like Alice Cooper, you say, "Oh, I'm me behind the scenes. As soon as I walk out stage, it's Alice." I've always heard that about Marylin Manson, but where the difference is I've never heard really anything bad about Alice Cooper. But everything about Marylin Manson has always been kind of, why isn't there, somebody knocking on his door? I've never heard anything particularly good about the guy.
I haven't either.
And I actually think it sucks.
The only thing I've ever heard good about him is actually Alice Cooper talking about Marylin Manson and the fact that he is good as a shock type of performer. That was it. And it wasn't saying that he was, a good person at it. He was just saying that his performance is very good.
Oh man, when he first started, I remember when The Beautiful People came out. When he first started, I don't think there was anybody who did it as well. He was, how do I put this? For the time he came out, he was the perfect act for that. He played on people's fears. I remember an MTV thing, Music Awards, when he was on doing his shtick. There was a bunch of rappers on one side, him doing his kind of anti-religious, creeping people out. You have all these rappers crossing their hearts, and these are supposed to be big gangbangers, and he was amazing. Like I remember, like a friend of mine had the tape of Beautiful People, the cassette tape, and I remember playing it on my old radio boombox I had in my room, and my mom came storming like Roosevelt on San Juan Hill. It's like, turn that stuff off. It's like, how did you hear that? I have to admit, I'm kind of bummed to hear that he did that, because I always thought, even though his music was not my thing, you could see the genius behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, it takes a skill to be that to do that. Like,
he's looking at me because I'm making these faces. Like it's like, okay, fine.
There's a lot of theatrics there.
All right. Well, good for him. Good for him.
Well, apparently they weren't all theatrics, John.
No kidding. Apparently he's
apparently not.
So the question is, do you think he's going to be sharing a cell with Cosby?
You know what? If there's any truth to these allegations at all, it's possible.
I don't know.
But it's that you got to prove it.
But yeah,
When you have this many people come out,
I like his music though.
Maybe.
And so what I just got to say is that I'm disappointed that it wasn't just a performance, because that's one thing, but to bring it into his actual personal life and make it into a lifestyle, that's a whole nother thing, especially when a lot of these victims are coming out and saying that it was manipulation and they weren't into it type thing. And there's people out there that are coming along and saying, oh, well, it's Marylin Manson. You should have known what to expect. Not necessarily. So if they weren't really into it and he continued with it, then I hope he does get prosecuted.
Right. Well, I mean, if he's guilty, that we want to see justice. But, you know, and if he's not, okay, that's fine. But the unfortunate part is that you guys kind of feel that it's possible that it's all true. And that's a sad statement.
From where I'm at, it is all true.
Yeah. Okay.
From what I'm looking at, I mean, we've got so many people coming out, and a lot of them from Marylin Manson's public statements, you know, that he said about these accusations, is there is absolutely no denial from him.
Yeah.
None. He is not saying he did not do it. That's the really, which I got to give him credit for coming out and not saying, oh, they're all liars. I got to give him credit there. But there's like no shame.
It was really well worded. It's really well worded what he said, but if you read it, there is absolutely no denial in any of the accusations. Yeah, because there says there's always been people like have questions about my art or yada, yada, yada. I'm heavily paraphrasing. Yeah, it definitely was not a denial. It was basically him saying there has always been people questioning me and my art and myself and, you know, yada, yada, yada.
Well, if you didn't look so freaking weird, probably wouldn't question you so much.
See that part doesn't bother me, really.
Bothers me.
Well, I
he's offensive to the eye, let alone listen to his music. Jeez.
You should have tried growing up in the era after Crow was released, when everybody and their mom was wearing trench coats. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Craft and the Crow were interesting times for our childhood.
I remember multiple women on the bus going, "You want to call the Four Corners?" It's like, oh, I fucking hate that. I remember going, "Oi, so Rob,
yeah,
have you heard of Screamin' J Hawkins?"
Yeah.
So Screamin' J Hawkins was considered the pioneer of shock rock.
Well, so there's a few of them out there that were way before Howard Stern that
shock
were out
rock.
there. Yeah. And unfortunately, way back, even starting in the 50s, some of them would attempt to do some shock jock stuff and immediately got fired.
Well, shock rock.
Or shock rock, yeah.
So the reason why I've always heard Screamin' J Hawkins, or Jallacy, Jalacy was his real first name. So it says, let's see, it was an American singer, songwriter, musician, actor, film producer, boxer, famed chief for his powerful operatic voice, delivery, and wild theatrical performance such as I Put a Spell on You. He sometimes used macabre props on stage, making him an early pioneer of shock rock. So that's the reason I brought him up, is if you haven't heard him, he's actually pretty cool. You can catch They Put a Spell on You music video.
He did some radio stuff too, try to start out to get some momentum too, but that you're right.
Because his genres apparently were blues, rhythm and blues, soul, rock and roll, shock. I mean, he's actually super talented, but I since we were talking about such a
Shocky
apparently
stuff?
Lousy human being, I wanted to bring up at least, you know.
Oh, there's so many lousy human
We
beings
brought up
out there.
Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper's a pretty decent guy.
Alice Cooper actually is pretty. He may look a little strange, but he is a decent guy.
You know, the funniest thing about Alice Cooper, if somebody had told me he's a preacher's kid when I was younger, I'd have been like,
makes sense.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Everybody I've ever known was a preacher's kid. Makes sense.
Yeah, I say it makes sense.
Yeah, whole 100%. So, Mandalorian fans out there. Okay.
Oh gosh, are we going here?
We've heard the latest about Gina Carano.
Gina Carano, yeah.
Everybody pronounces it different. Carano. So Gina, unfortunately, which is kind of making me sad because I kind of liked her in this role of what was it, Cara Dune?
Yeah.
That's the
no
character.
Cara Dune.
I think
Let's pull it up.
Anyway, she played the character on Mandalorian and helped him out in certain situations, and I thought she was perfect for the role. Unfortunately, has been fired by Disney.
No, that's actually she was canceled by Disney. That's so let's be honest. So
canceled versus fired versus let go versus terminated.
I like canceled because canceled. Well, because if you take a look what happened, because apparently she posted something on social media which either I couldn't find or I wasn't looking hard enough.
It's been removed. I couldn't find it either, and apparently it was anti-Semitic, which is unfortunate. Yeah. And she was claimed of some other rants going on there, and she was supposedly a Trump supporter, which didn't help her in Hollywood.
See, the thing I kept seeing on social media is it was something anti-trans. I thought that the people on social media that I saw were pissed off with that. The only reason I said they canceled, I think better.
What the headline I have here is the transphobic, anti-mask, and Holocaust tweets that led to Gina getting fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I like
anti-mask. I remember that now. Yes.
I prefer canceled because at least I think it actually shows what happened. Now, whether you agree with it canceling or not, I think it's fitting because you had a bunch of people who were up in arms against it. So, I mean, what do you think, James? Do you prefer canceled or fired? Because I think canceled has a bigger denunciation, or
I don't care.
Mr. Pedantic himself doesn't care, huh?
Does it matter? She doesn't work there anymore. I mean, she lost a job that I kind of think, I kind of think it should be. Here's one of the tweets. Beep, bop, boop has zero to do with mocking trans people. Heart and 100% to do with exposing the bullying mentality of the mob that has taken over the voices of many genuine causes. I want people to know you can take hate with a smile, so boop you for misunderstanding. All love.
What the heck? Okay.
I'm confused.
This one is talking about voter fraud, flush out the fake votes, require ID, make voter fraud end in 2020.
That'll
fix
do
the
it.
System. And then she puts up a kind of comedic one about that the CDC and the Democrat government leaders are now recommending people wear blindfolds with their masks so they can't see what's really going on.
I like that. Blindfolds
I'm not
with your
really
mask?
seeing anything that
Any reason?
Yeah, I don't see.
Okay, well.
I don't see one with a Holocaust reference. That's what I'm kind of confused at, is they're all talking about Holocaust references. And, no.
Maybe those were scrubbed. So far, maybe those were scrubbed.
Yeah, that one must have been scrubbed.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
But I don't see one of that. Oh, wait here.
I'd be super curious
okay. Apparently, she mocked the safety measures during a pandemic and compared them to things that happened during the Holocaust.
Hold on.
So I could see that one offending a lot of people.
So pause. So everybody out there, can we all agree on one thing? Stop comparing everything to World War II, whether it's calling Trump fucking Hitler. And yes, I'm cussing because it pisses me off. Or jails or Holocaust things like that. That's all universally agreed. To pick something that's a little more relevant to the situation.
But I could see that one because apparently she's saying that the treatment of the Republicans and the people that are anti-maskers and things like that, she was comparing them to the Jews during the Holocaust. Being, oppressed or whatever.
Persecuted.
I could see that being a last straw. I could see that one being a last straw. The other ones, I don't see anything wrong with that. That's her own personal page. But to take something so, as John said, it should not be compared to then and now. I don't.
So there's a New York Magazine writer who made an interesting comparison about this. And I wanted to bring it up because Rob was alive, at least for the after effects of it. No, listen, Hollywood.
We're getting serious. Where's our serious music?
Hollywood is accused of McCarthy-esque crusades against conservatives after firing actress Gina Carano from The Mandalorian. As somebody who was alive, at least for the effects
My
of
childhood of McCarthyism, do remember some of the effects of it.
So
The blacklisting in Hollywood was a big one.
So as the official old guy,
here we go.
Right.
I'm curious in what you think of that. Or what was that, James?
Oh, did you find it?
Oh, I just found the tweet. I have the word for word of the tweet now.
All
so
right.
What was it?
Okay. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them for simply being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?
You know, she's not wrong.
No, she's not wrong. And that's different from what I was reading actually in the article. It brings a different light to it. So I don't see that one being a last straw, actually.
Well, again,
I understand it being controversial to people, but
right.
I don't consider that controversial. My thought would be,
I could see how it would be construed as controversial for people.
How?
I could see that. Because people are sensitive assholes.
Well, maybe because she's actually stating some of the truth that people don't want to be reminded of. And isn't that the whole thing that we're fighting with history overall? From tearing down statues instead of putting up something saying why we would tear down the statue, to every form of trying to change history.
Because my thought on that is that would work for, like, say, Texas, where it's super conservative, or San Francisco that's super liberal. I mean, the way I take it, and maybe I'm obviously not normal.
Well, you're talking about the problem of being conservative in Hollywood.
Yes.
And you are in a very rarefied era of minorityism in Hollywood if you're conservative. And I mean, a lot of actors have been having problems getting jobs, whatever it may be, especially if they're younger, if they're conservative, have conservative views. Kevin Sorbo is a good example. There's an example of another conservative that's been busily trying to keep his career going alive. And unfortunately, he's conservative. We can't have him on the show. And Gina's, Lucy Lawless was another one. Now, I guess I read a quick thing saying people are saying, oh, she ought to be the one to replace Gina. Well, unfortunately, Lucy's a little too old at this point. She's not Xena Warrior Princess any longer.
I've seen her in a few shows, and she still looks pretty good. She
does
look young.
She does, but it's a pretty physical role.
They could have her as the older Mandalorian, the female, who has a few miles under her belt.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's not a Mandalorian. Well, they could have her, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that, we have swung from one extreme to the other. But Hollywood has always seemed to be, you go from the 1950s McCarthyism era with blacklists in Hollywood and actors turning in actors. In some cases, it's been proven that they did it just so that they could get the role. They would point their finger at somebody and said, hey, I heard them talking about communism. And all of a sudden now you're blacklisted. So it's been going on for a long time. And it doesn't change. And it's the old statement about you can't have your own opinion if it's different than what the majority might be in Hollywood.
That's
what the government tells you. Okay, so.
But, I still think that, her personal views
should be her own.
Were not being on soapboxed in the show.
No, not at all.
So she wasn't sitting there on the show, putting her views out there. That's where I would have a problem if she's on the show and all of a sudden starts ad-libbing or gets the script written to enforce her views on the television show. Mm-hmm. That's where I would have an issue with her being on the show, which she wasn't doing. Now, her personal views on her personal social media page should not necessarily, as long as they're not straight out, I hate this person, or I hate this race of people, or I hate this thing, which I don't see in any of her tweets. I've read all the ones that are, were controversial that people are saying she needs to be fired over. I don't see that there. I see those as her being either saying her view, which wasn't put in a hateful way, or making a joke about something that she doesn't agree with in not a hateful way. So I don't see anything in there that would constitute being fired over. I see them being controversial and not the majority viewpoint that people are looking to see.
Part of it, I think, at this point is because of the way society is nowadays. I think that's why. I don't think she was necessarily fired because it was because of what she said, but because it was controversial.
Yeah, that's what I see it as. Specifically,
people like Disney, who, even though they're a multi-billion or zillion-dollar corporation, they still have to play. Not nice, but they still have to play it safe on modern times. So I think that's why they did it, is because Disney, it was the bottom line versus one person who they fight for. Now, if you take that, say Walt Disney, say if there was a tape of Walt Disney saying absolutely horrendous stuff against, I don't know, Jews or homosexuals, the question is, would they?
He probably did.
Well, the question is, if they did, if it was on tape, would Disney remove Disney from Disney? Now, I don't think they would, because Disney died 70s.
It's been a while.
The man, nobody remembers the man Disney himself. I guarantee there's not a whole people alive today who actually knew him personally. The Disney you know now is a caricature, but would they do it? And that's kind of how I look at this. The Gina thing is she was not worth them dying on their sword
66.
over. 66. Okay.
Wow,
1966.
So, the problem is that we're back to, we started out talking about the First Amendment, right? We had an issue with, right? Marylin Manson or Larry Flint and that whole, we're back to what can you say with, your right to say or state your opinion that, if you get hired, all right, I get hired by Disney. Now, all of a sudden, I can't say what I truly believe. I've got to walk the party line. Does that sound familiar?
The question is, my only thought is where. I think nowadays we're in kind of an odd spot because of social media, even podcasting. It's because back in the day, say before social media, if you said some of the stuff she said, you might have pissed off a few people around you, but nobody would have known. Now that she's a somewhat famous figure or a B or D-list celebrity, her platform is a little larger. So now you're in a room full of people shouting.
Hey, the gossip sheets have been out there since the 50s. There have been writers writing about what people said from the Rat Pack.
But that's third hand though. But most people.
Okay, you're right. In this case, this is her. I guess she admitted she said that. Don't forget, some people have people posting for them. It's not really them.
Most people, I think, believe, unless there's proof otherwise, that Facebook, social media is the first party. It's a first party thing. Like if I don't know, if Adam Savage said something horrible, everybody's think, oh, that was Adam Savage, instead of say, no, I hired an idiot kid. He said that. I don't think people would believe that. And I think that's the situation, is everybody thinks you're in a crowded room shouting horrible things. Now, I think the argument can be made that maybe, hey, educate her on why she's wrong. Now, I don't know. I don't get it, because that's never, I was always raised different.
You want her to be re-educated now?
No, what
that's what it just sounded like you were saying. I'm sorry.
We go the re-education camps. Why don't you? Off she's got to go now.
No, because before
that's what you kind of said, though.
Well, no, because before. No, I know. By the way, thank you for pointing it out, because I said it wrong. But it was like when what's his name? The guy from Lethal Weapon movie, Mel Gibson, said all those horrible things about Jews, absolutely knockered off his mind. Part of the thing he did was, he went to a bunch of Jewish organizations and he talked to people, and he at least got to see their side of it. Now,
Well, what about the guy with Passion of the Christ?
Jim Caviezel.
Yeah, they got so.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not going to use this term crucified because it's a terrible analogy, but basically he did for just playing the part.
See,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's differently because I literally think the reason why is because Mel Gibson pocketed an absolute fortune. And it's the old thing is you don't make money in Hollywood outside of the system. And I think he got wrapped up in it. And also the fact that Jim Caviezel actually said, yeah, he's a believer at one point in time.
Well, yeah, and it's fine. What's wrong with that? I mean, it's like, all right, now you can't have your own religious views.
See, this one I can actually argue. Part of it, I think, is because Christians have sold a bill of, they've sold a bill of goods, but that they don't.
The bill of goods to what?
No, hold
Okay, wait a minute. He's trying to put his thoughts together.
No, I don't know how to say this, but I think Christians have said one thing historically and acted a different way.
Okay, I get what you mean. Yeah, they're being hypocrites.
Oh,
Yes.
All right, hypocritical too, of course.
And I think that's
And that's
one of
in
the
any
reasons.
religion. I don't care what it is.
Well, I think because
Almost anything.
because
That's a good point.
because Christianity is such a dominant faith in the United States, and as a believer myself,
In the world, actually.
I think that was the issue is people. We sold the bill of goods so far, then people now are like, no, I don't like this. I think I think that is just reaping the rewards of what we did. We broadcasted love and didn't show any.
Okay, so with that said, I mean, I think we're going to circle all the way back to Gina here and talk a little bit about when is it going to be okay to be able to state your view, as long as it's not a hate view, not something just so overtly bad that you can state your views and still not be worried about losing your job.
So I would say if you're a celebrity, keep your mouth shut. Not worth it. If you're you and me,
Who cares?
I don't know how you, I don't
I
know.
know.
I will see.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I think that's the problem. I think there's a lot of actors in Hollywood that choose to say, and maybe rightfully so. Maybe
Okay,
their
hold on.
lives
Let me
as
just
maybe their
put it
lives as
this
an
way.
actor, maybe their lives as actors should be completely separate from the lives as a human being.
How about I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this right, but along the lines of discretion, how about you teach discretion instead of brainwashing, like John said, or re-education, as we could put it. I hate the fact of having to think about stifling our First Amendment right, but our First Amendment right isn't to be an asshole in how we talk. So if we're going to bring out our viewpoints, I think as far as being a celebrity or highly in the public eye, you need to learn some sort of discretion. Does that make more sense?
No, you're entirely right.
So,
I think the majority of
reading-
actors in Hollywood do just that.
yeah, but reading Gina's, the tweets that
right.
were in that article that are controversial, apparently, I wouldn't say they were
There goes the cuffs.
done in
John's
a
being
tasteless
taken away.
manner. I think they were done in a controversial, humoristic manner, which I wouldn't say is the best course of discretion. The one where she was, I guess, comparing the division between political views that is going on in our country right now wasn't the most discreet manner, but I don't think it was done in a humoristic, tasteless manner.
So,
And what I read, did you guys take it as a tasteless?
Not from what I not actually reading the actual tweet, but hearing it from what you
Yeah.
said. No,
Yeah.
well, this
I didn't think it was.
I
So
don't
I
either.
just want to know, where do we draw the line as what we can say as far as First Amendment goes?
I think this goes back to the biggest problem with text is inflection of what you're saying versus saying, like saying, I love you versus I love you. It's really hard to get the minutia of text. And I think what James is saying is people need to learn how to frame what they're saying in a more concise manner. Right? Is that, because that's
Yeah.
kind of how I'm taking it.
Not a concise manner, but in a
a manner that can relay something properly,
I
not
thought
offensively?
from hearing the tweet, I thought she was making a point that used maybe a reference that here's partly okay. Now I'm going to step back here and try to rephrase this in a way that I understand where I'm coming from.
Okay.
There are many Jews out there that believe that if you're going to talk about the Holocaust and you're going to talk about what happened to the Jews, it should not be talked about in any manner other than what happened to these people, period.
Right? That's a good point. You've got to, yeah.
Okay.
With reverence and shock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's where it becomes what probably happened to her. She used it in a reference that was not dignified. I don't know.
Okay, I will say this though. In today's society, as John pointed out, there's a lot of comparison that people do to the atrocities committed in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as what you're hinting at, that is a complete disservice to the Holocaust survivors and to their families that the Holocaust survivors gave birth to.
Right.
Because that's where we're at now. We have a lot of Holocaust survivors' children's children.
Right.
Now, there's not very many Holocaust survivors. I think there's only literally a handful now. And I'm talking like maybe 5. So literally a handful. So we're talking about the survivors' children now. And I think that does a disservice to them to be like, oh, I heard it with Homeland Security when Homeland Security came out. Oh, they're brown shirts. That's a World War II reference to the Holocaust.
Right.
Because the brown shirts did a lot of atrocities. And, I've heard it compared to each presidential regime in at least the past 15 years. And I think to see it now again, maybe it's a last straw for her to compare it to compare something that isn't as
culturally sensitive.
Yeah.
Well, understood.
I think it desensitizes us to the things that actually happened. I think that's what it is. It's a desensitizing it.
Yeah, understood.
I had a question. So we're running out of time. If you guys want to go a little bit later, I'm okay with that. So here's the question. So whether you're talking about transphobia, homophobia, or you're talking about using the image of the Holocaust incredibly poorly or poorly, I guess how would you use it? Would you not use those comparisons? Would you use? I guess the question is because if somebody found a comet transphobic, what is the way? Either you don't do that, or do you approach it, or do you approach when you're writing the comment in a way that actually shows? I guess what do you do?
I think you just need to say it's wrong.
So just
why would you have to compare it? Why would you always have to compare it to something else? Why can't you just point it out and list what's wrong with it?
So
what she's saying, what she was saying is that the political views that differ are being oppressed by both sides. And not necessarily, she was more leaning towards the right wing, but
so everybody uses
the other. Why can't you just say that?
Right.
Why do you have to bring it into something else and say this is comparing it to the Holocaust and this is how they made it happen?
Right.
I've seen so many times that happening, even with the stripping away of rights of the Second Amendment. Second Amendment. I completely butchered saying that. And saying that when you take the guns away, that's how you end up with people shooting you. Why can't you just say that instead of saying, oh, that's how the Nazis did it. That's how, the USSR did it.
We use comparisons. We use comparisons in our lives, James, every day.
I understand that.
Right? It's a comparison. Now, is it an appropriate comparison? That's the argument, I think.
Yeah,
right.
That's where I'm coming from.
So you're coming
I understand
from
the comparisons. Right. I'm just saying, just say it's wrong. It doesn't always need to be a comparison.
I agree with James specifically about this, and stop using the Hitler this and the Holocaust that, unless it's like a direct comparison.
But at the same time, I don't want that history to fade away. I mean, I see an awful lot of the world.
To it.
Right.
Sorry, I talked right over you.
That's okay. There's an awful lot of the world that unfortunately is anti-Israeli. There's many factions in the United States alone that are anti-Israeli. And I look at it, it's, you at the same time, you don't want the history of what went down to go away. And so is it appropriate to use the comparison or not? In some respects, I look at it as bringing it to a point where you don't forget what went down to, all right, I understand that you don't want it to be used in such a way that, it's not being dignified to what happened. So I understand both sides of that, but I think both can coexist. I really believe they did.
Normally, I would say it could, but I think right now, the way the world is so hypersensitive, I think we need to be a little bit more aware, specifically about groups, whether they are oppressed or appear to be, whether it's, like say the trans stuff, group or not.
Why is it okay? Nah, I'm not even going to go down this road because we could get a lot of hate mail. But it seems to me that just not making exact points, but saying, why is it okay now that there's a certain groups that are okay to say and talk about and promote and all of this, and other groups that are not?
Because I think this is the way I view it right now is this part of history where society is changing, and I think that happens when new groups are coming to light, or they're forming. And so I think they're allowed more leeway some ways than other groups. I just think that's just the natural progression of the way society is. I think eventually when they're more homogenized in society, maybe a little bit more accepted, I think then that particular sensitivity of whatever it is will go away. I just think...
I think we're always going to have minority and majority groups.
Oh, no.
Majority, sorry. And there are always going to be somebody out there saying, I'm the minority, I need to be recognized, and you can't do this against me or that, or because it's wrong. It's always going to happen. I mean, that's what we've seen. I've seen that in the years that I've been alive. I've seen that countless times. And I'm not saying that the minority groups need to be oppressed and not listened to. I'm just saying that it's going to continue. That's just the society we live in.
Well, I think that more than that, I think that's human nature. That yesterday's minority is tomorrow's majority. So I think there's always going to be that fight. I think what it is, and I think Dr. Martin Luther King was the correct in saying it, is you create that equality. You give everybody the same foundation, the same rights, the same freedoms. You make sure that the minority that is not being oppressed, that they have, So I think that's what a lot of these groups are trying to do. I just think to the majority of people, it just seems like, because I don't know, it's hard to exactly describe. I think they're just fighting for what they believe in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but this is human nature, though. This is the way history's always been. If you take a look through history, there's always been this give and take and ebb and flow with people. I think what is new is the internet and social media. I guarantee if the internet wasn't around, I don't think anybody would care in a bad way about Gina's comparison, about the Holocaust. I don't think anybody would care about the trans comment, because in those areas, those transgender people are accepted, they'd be accepted, and that would grow throughout time. I think what happened is you have this powerful force called social media that puts a lens on everything, and it just blows away everything. There's no way you can block this lens. It's the Mythbusters death ray. And I think that's the problem. You don't give people the time to actually comment. Because, back in my dad's day, it'd be articles, it'd be this and that, but eventually it would die down when people discussed it enough. But I think what happens is we live in the post-forgiveness world, and if you're guilty once, you're guilty a second time, and if you're guilty a second time, you're guilty a third time, and I older I get, the more I think the internet may be a bad thing for discussing. I think we have to teach ourselves and our children how do we have discussions without being oversensitive. And I don't know how you do that.
I think what has to happen is we have to learn to be tolerant of other views. And that's something that I've been working on diligently, trying to be tolerant of views that I just can't believe to a certain degree. And I go, okay, you have a right to your opinion and your belief and move along.
But I think that's a lost art, Rob.
No, 100%.
I think in our society, if you look at the internet, and I kind of touched on this a few weeks back when I pointed out that we live in a society where we don't see opposing views often based on our newsfeed. And we only see things that either agree with us or are in line with it. Not necessarily completely agree with our viewpoints, but are mostly in line with it. And that's because of the algorithms that we have in social media. And not only that, but also our news feed is based on our friends. And if we see people that we don't agree with, we can hide that. We can remove that. And a lot of us and a lot of our society does just that. It's very rare that you find people who will keep friends or make it so that they can see people in their news feed that don't agree with them. And I think that's become an issue, is because they don't see it as, I disagree with this person, but I can still be friends with them and I can still talk to them.
Yeah, those days seem to be over.
See, this goes.
Yeah, it really does seem to be over.
Yeah.
This goes back to what I've said since the beginning of Old Guy Tech TV, and even older, is you got to agree to disagree. You got to come to a point that says, I don't agree with you, but that's awesome. And because I have friends who believe 180 degrees more different than I do. I mean, I have friends who are so polar opposite me. The fact we're friends sometimes is astounding.
Yeah.
And they're some of the most loving, caring people I've met. And I think the problem is, I'm sorry. I think what it is we're not people anymore. You're a Democrat. You're gay. You're a Christian.
Everybody's got to have a label.
Yeah. Instead of saying, you and I share the most common bond possible. We're both humans, and I think we need labels for some reason. I love talking to everybody, whether, black, white, gay, straight. I love talking to people because you get their worldview, their experiences, adds a flavor to my life that I can understand what they go through. And I think we don't want that anymore. You want this. You've got to be isolated inside this bubble. And honestly, I think it hurts society. I guarantee if this world, and I think the internet 100% is the cause of this. Because when I was a kid, if I talked to people in real life the way people talk to people on the internet, my mom would have slapped me.
I don't think I'd be alive.
No, your mom would have, let's be honest, your mom would have drawn and quartered you.
Yeah. Well, the ability to, and we've been saying this for a long time, the ability to be able to hide behind a handle on the internet allows people to have diarrhea of the mouth. That what a way to end the show. That this allows them to say things, things that they wouldn't say to your face. I mean, to be honest. So that's partly what happens with it as well. It has been for a long time. I think that's leaked into real life. And to quote the Beatles, there's nothing you can do that can't be done, nothing you can sing that can't be sung. There's nothing you can say, but you need to learn how to play the game. It's easy. All you need is love. So, ladies and gentlemen, apparently the old guy is having a fit. I better go check him. We're running over. I mean, come on. People aren't going to listen to,
So I wanted to finish what I was saying, but fine. Ladies and gentlemen, for the California Pride,
Next
Jonathan
week.
Charney, James, the Fat Man, Stevens, and Rob, the old guy, because it's way past his bedtime.
That's right.
As always, Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.